After getting back together, I finally became the kind of person Sam liked. Gentle and generous. Not losing my temper for no reason. Giving him enough personal space. At the celebration party, Julia lost the game and needed one man present to unhook her bra, and Sam offered his help without the slightest hesitation. I only smiled good-naturedly. The colleagues all started mocking me. TSK, TSK. Look what Sam has trained Miranda into. Sure enough, once a woman gets dumped once, she learns to behave. Just look at the gap in their status. If she left Sam, what would she even have? Exactly. Everything she has now was given to her by Sam, wasn't it? What right does she have to throw a tantrum? Amid all the ridicule in the same tone, a discordant voice suddenly appeared. But I don't think that's it. It's clearly because she doesn't love him anymore. So she doesn't care. Hearing that, Sam's movement halted, and he suddenly looked at me. Chapter 1. I was still smiling, very obedient. There wasn't the slightest trace of jealousy or possessiveness in my eyes, as if I were a sculpture with no feelings at all, exactly the way Sam had hoped for countless times in the past. But this time, an intense unease rose in his heart for no apparent reason. Maybe it was because of what had just been said, or maybe it was the blinding smile on my face. Sam steadied himself, slowly let out a breath, and spoke in his usual superior tone. Miranda, come out with me for a moment. With that, ignoring the astonished looks from everyone around, he strode out of the private room. I stood up. I greeted the others first, then obediently followed him out. Sam was waiting for me at the entrance of the club. In the dim night, the tall, long-legged man leaned against the wall, the cigarette at his fingertips glowing on and off. He took a hard drag. I walked up to him and said respectfully, "President Sam." Sam's eyes darkened. He exhaled a ring of smoke, his voice low and hoarse. "You used to call me Sam." I lifted a professional smile and answered flawlessly. "Strictly speaking, this is still working hours, and we have a superior-subordinate relationship. So calling you President Sam is more appropriate. I would not make the same mistake a second time." I still remember that one time, less than 5 minutes before the end of the workday, when I was delivering documents to Sam. I asked in a coquettish tone, "Sam, where are we going for dinner after work? I'm so hungry." The man frowned. He said nothing. I thought he was busy with work and didn't think much of it. On my way out, I happened to run into the new intern, Julia, with reddened eyes, looking as if she were about to cry. She slammed into me hard and rushed into the office. I thought maybe she had been bullied at the company, or that I had offended her somehow without realizing it. I had wanted to find a chance to ask her what had happened. But the next morning, Sam reprimanded me in front of the entire staff in this company. My only identity is President Sam. Certain people shouldn't always think they're the exception. He didn't name names, but everyone knew it was me. The looks of contempt and disdain that came my way from time to time made me want to disappear. I even made excuses for him. That was just the kind of person Sam was, strictly professional and utterly impartial. It wasn't until later, when I caught him fooling around with Julia, that I belatedly realized that that time, the man had actually been standing up for her. Sam irritably ran a hand through his hair. It was as if he was dissatisfied with how tactful I was being now. Expressionless, he stubbed out the cigarette in his hand. After a long silence, he hesitated before speaking. "Just now, when I was about to help Julia, why didn't you stop me? Or is it really like they said, that you don't love me anymore?" Maybe it was just my imagination, but in Sam's last sentence, I could actually hear a hint of fear. In an easy, sincere tone, I said, "It was only a game. It's fine. And besides, whether I still love you or not isn't important. What matters is that I can't leave you. My mother's hospitalization and treatment expenses still depend on you, don't they?" Sam stared fixedly at me, a heavy pressure radiating from his whole body. He didn't know what was wrong with him today. Clearly, every sentence from the other person was exactly what he wanted to hear. And yet, somehow, everything felt strange. There was a sense of losing control, like a plane malfunctioning just before it crashed. In a sudden flash of realization, Sam abruptly understood something. He straightened up, looked down at me from above, and said with certainty, "You're angry, aren't you? You blame me for making you hand the project over to Julia. You blame her for taking your credit. Otherwise, the star of this celebration banquet should have been you. After saying that, Sam actually did something rare and patiently gave me an explanation. But without this opportunity, she wouldn't be able to get a full-time position. As for your promotion, that's only a matter of time. Chapter 2. I froze for a moment. Of course not. I had almost forgotten about that altogether. After all, I had no plans to stay at the company long-term, so whose name the project went under did not matter to me. And out of guilt, Sam had also transferred me double the project bonus as compensation. Overall, I was quite satisfied, and when he had informed me about it in that half-threatening, half-tempting way, I had not expressed even the slightest dissatisfaction, so I could not quite understand why Sam would think that. But none of that mattered anymore. I did not want to waste any more energy trying to guess what he was thinking, so I calmly shook my head and spoke in a gentle voice. President Sam, I understand your difficulties. For some reason, Sam's brows furrowed even more deeply. He looked at me with dark, unreadable eyes, his tone growing heavier as he said unhappily, Miranda, you want to break up again, don't you? It was not a question. It sounded more like a warning. After all, the breakup with Sam 3 months ago had nearly cost me half my life. He knew what breaking up meant to me. The reason he said that was to make me behave, and behave even more. But this time, hearing those 2 words, I did not have a stress reaction, and my heart no longer ached faintly. At that moment, I suddenly realized that these past few months of desensitization training seemed to have finally allowed me to let go of this utterly rotten relationship. And just 3 days earlier, the hospital had called to say that Mom was doing very well and had already awakened from her vegetative state. She would be able to be discharged soon. That meant that from now on, I would no longer be held in check by Sam emotionally or financially. At that thought, I parted my lips, and the words that works too were about to slip out. But in the very next second, a delicate, aggrieved voice came from behind me, with tears in her eyes. Julia spoke in a soft, plaintive tone. Sam, could you come cut the cake with me? At a moment like this, I want to spend it with you. At the sound of her voice, Sam turned his head. His cold, sharp features instantly softened. He stopped paying attention to me and strode toward Julia, replying with a light laugh full of indulgence. You little crybaby, I'll come with you right now. Don't cry, okay? In an instant, Julia burst into a smile through her tears. I watched the 2 of them walk hand in hand back into the club, and only after their figures had completely disappeared did I withdraw my gaze expressionlessly. I supposed the rest of the evening would not require me anymore. I walked to the parking lot not far away. Then I drove the Porsche Sam had given me back to the place he and I shared. I washed up, did my skincare, got into bed and closed my eyes. And then, inevitably, I began to recall the past. Julia joined the company in the 3rd year of my relationship with Sam. She was purer than I was, came from a more broken family, and was even more like a delicate, helpless little white flower. The first time Sam mentioned Julia to me was during a torrential rainstorm, when the girl refused his offer to drive her home and went back alone in the rain. As a result, she ran a high fever for 3 days. In response, Sam gave a mocking laugh and commented lightly, "Stupid and pretentious." But in private, he still had his assistant specially deliver fever medicine to her. Of course, the man never let me know about any of that. I realized there was something unusual between the 2 of them during the time when our entire department had worked overtime for a full month, only for Julia to ruin the deal. She had privately altered several very important figures in the contract, and she had even felt smug about it. When the client discovered the mistake, they judged our team unprofessional and rejected the cooperation on the spot. That meant that everyone's effort and hard work had gone down the drain. Chapter 3. I was so angry that my head was spinning, and I said a few harsh words. Are you a pig? Who gave you the nerve to alter a contract on your own, now that the client has refused to cooperate? Are you going to bear the consequences? Are you going to bear the losses? Pack your things right now and get out. Julia's face turned deathly pale, and she sobbed uncontrollably, choking back tears. She said, "I'm sorry, Miranda. I just saw that the data didn't make sense. So I really didn't know it would cause such serious consequences. I was almost amused by how stupid she was. Right. Of course. You're the smart one. Such an obvious mistake. And the entire team missed it. But you alone caught it. Use your brain for a second. Do you really think that's likely? Even if something like that had actually happened, before changing it, wouldn't you have needed to ask your superior first? Julia stopped talking and just kept crying. That was until Sam happened to walk in on the scene. His face tense. The man stepped in front of her protectively and accused me without asking any questions. Miranda, this company is not a place for you to throw your weight around and bully newcomers. No matter what happened, apologize to Julia. My body went rigid. At that moment, I even forgot my anger. It was as if an invisible hand had seized my heart, making it almost impossible for me to breathe. Only when the other colleagues in the department, gathering their courage and trembling nervously, explained the whole story to Sam, did the man give a faint nod, leaving behind only, "I'll take responsibility for the consequences." He took Julia's hand and led her away. By the time I came back to myself, whispers were already buzzing in my ears. Sam is really not giving Miranda any face at all. If I remember correctly, aren't the two of them dating? The private lives of rich people are a mess. Having several girlfriends at the same time isn't anything new for them. That must be it. The way Sam was protecting Julia just now. He looked like a hen protecting her chick, afraid she'd suffer the slightest grievance. Miranda is so pitiful. I took a deep breath and chased after him to Sam's office. Julia was sitting on the sofa, swinging her legs casually, munching on chips as if nothing had happened. When she saw me come in, she shrank back in fear, but watched me with a mix of smugness and caution. Then Sam lifted his eyes and said coldly, "What is it?" I withdrew my gaze, took a deep breath, and tried my best to keep my voice calm. "Why?" Sam knew what I was asking. The man frowned, ignored the grievance in my tone, and said indifferently, "If you came here to question what happened just now, then you can leave. There is no why. Miranda, this is the company, and I am your superior. You are not qualified to question my decisions." I bit down hard on my teeth, doing everything I could to keep my body from trembling. An indescribable sorrow rose from the soles of my feet and quickly spread through my whole body, thinking of the gossip I had just heard from the others. My face turned even paler. The tip of my nose stung with tears, and with a bitter smile I asked, "Sam, one last question. What exactly is your relationship with Julia?" Sam rubbed his brow with a headache, not answering my question, as if his patience had run out. "Miranda, go home and rest for a few days." Just like that, I was suspended without warning. Everyone immediately started speculating that I had offended Julia and been completely cast aside by Sam. That whole week, I stayed at home, unable to sleep all night long. Every second, I kept reflecting on whether I was just being too sensitive, whether Sam perhaps had his own reasons, but I simply could not convince myself, because when similar things had happened to me, the scene had looked completely different. Chapter 4. At that time, relying on my relationship with Sam did indeed help me avoid quite a bit of trouble at the company, but there were still a very small number of colleagues who targeted me on purpose. Lily was at the same level as me, openly and behind my back. She mocked me for being a nepotism hire and for sleeping my way to the top. And at work, she deliberately refused to cooperate on multiple occasions. If that had been all, I could have let it go. But because of her hostility, she deliberately held up the approval process, and the work could not move forward. The first time I went to Sam for help, when I made that request, I was nervous, but I had never imagined I would be refused. Sam took off his gold-rimmed glasses, and a faint trace of exhaustion showed between his brows. The man sighed. "I don't understand why you're angry. Aren't everything they said facts? What exactly are you feeling wronged about? By deliberately exposing our relationship at the company, you've already gotten a lot of convenience from it. Miranda, I hope you remember that this is the workplace. You can't come running to your boyfriend every time you have the slightest little problem." The joy in my heart was doused completely by a bucket of cold water. I nodded blankly, my whole body stiff, explaining again and again that I had never deliberately exposed my relationship with him. Sam lowered his head and continued handling work, saying he was busy and telling me to leave first. I have already forgotten how I walked out of the office. I only remember being depressed over it for a very long time. I understood Sam's difficulties, so I was never dissatisfied with him because of that matter. Not until I saw how carefully he protected Julia did I finally stop being able to deceive myself. During that period, I was almost constantly in pain and torn inside. Should I break up? But my mother's nursing fees, hospitalization fees, and treatment costs were an enormous sum, and at that point, I simply could not afford them. And there was one more thing I could not deny. I really did love Sam. During the days when I was at my most helpless and on the verge of collapse, it was he who reached out to me and pulled me out of the mud. I was almost being driven mad by this relationship that left me constantly afraid of losing what I had. Finally, a week later, on the man's birthday, I dressed up carefully and invited him out under the pretext of celebrating his birthday. With red-rimmed eyes, I opened up completely and laid bare, piece by piece, the vulnerable and confused path my heart had taken during that period, showing it all to him. At the end, I took out the birthday gift I had prepared for him and spoke in a trembling voice. Sam, I really love you. I don't want us to break up over something this small. Sam let me put the ring on him, the one I had bought for him with several months' worth of my salary. Then the man gently kissed my forehead. With a soft sigh, he said, Miranda, you don't need to buy me gifts that are beyond your spending level, as long as it's something from you. I like it. I laughed through my tears, naively thinking that the conflict between Sam and me had been resolved, and that those tiny cracks would gradually mend over the course of our long time together in the future. That day, at the restaurant I had carefully chosen and booked after taking a long time to decide, Sam had only taken 2 bites when he received a phone call. After hanging up, the man looked at me guiltily. There's an urgent matter at the company. I need to go over there right now. I hid my disappointment and smiled at him understandingly. You should go. It's okay. Before Sam left, he kissed my forehead and thoughtfully paid the bill. It was just that I had not expected that the relationship we had only just repaired would fracture again so quickly, and the reason was the ring I had given Sam for his birthday. Julia said she had never seen something so expensive and insisted that she wanted to look at it. But because she didn't hold it steady, it fell into the drain. Chapter 5. When I first learned about it, I actually didn't believe it. But when I saw the man's empty left hand, I still couldn't help asking indirectly, Sam, the ring I gave you, did you forget it at home? Sam lowered his eyes to the documents in his hands and didn't even raise his head. As if he were talking about something completely insignificant, I accidentally lost it. My heart clenched. I pressed my lips together, doing my best to suppress the tremor in my voice. Julia was the one who lost it, right? Hearing that name, Sam finally lifted his head and looked at me expressionlessly. His face was full of impatience. Miranda, does it matter who lost it? I'm very busy. Can you stop making trouble for no reason all the time? It was just some cheap little trinket anyway. If you like it, I'll buy you 10 more, in order to give Sam a decent gift. That ring had cost me nearly half a year's salary, and in his eyes, it was nothing more than some cheap little trinket. Looking at the man's cold, handsome face, I suddenly laughed. Scalding tears rolled down in streams. Without saying another word, I turned and left the office. We fell into another Cold War, and just as Sam had said, not long afterward, he sent me 10 Cartier rings. I didn't put on airs and refuse them. I listed them all on a second-hand resale platform, and made several $100,000 from them. That Cold War lasted a very long time, nearly a month, but Sam still did not cut off my mother's medical expenses because of it. Until one weekend, when I happened to run into Sam while taking care of my mother at the hospital. He was carrying a fruit basket. When he saw me, he greeted me as if nothing had happened, completely at ease. Want to have dinner together later? I hated my own indecisiveness, because at that moment, I wavered again, just because of one invitation from the man. But in the end, that dinner never happened. Carrying a large bag of ingredients I had carefully picked out at the supermarket, I opened the door to Sam's home, intending to surprise him, and happened to catch him kissing Julia. My right hand loosened. The groceries I had bought crashed to the floor with a loud bang. The two of them both turned to look at me. Back then, I broke down, became hysterical, shouted and screamed, probably like some mentally unstable madwoman. I grabbed Julia by the hair and, without another word, slapped her hard twice. Then I cursed her with the most vicious words I could think of. Sam rushed over to stop me. In the chaos, I swung back and slapped him too. Finger marks quickly appeared on the man's face. Only then did I calm down a little, tears falling uncontrollably as I choked out. When did this start? Sam did not answer my question. He only said coldly, Miranda, are you done making a scene? My face was icy cold as I stared at him in disbelief and asked back. I'm making a scene? Sam, you betrayed our relationship. You cheated on me. There was not the slightest trace of guilt on the man's face. He helped Julia up, drew her into his arms, and only then answered my question at an unhurried pace. In this circle, this kind of thing is very normal. Didn't you know that from the beginning? I stared at him blankly, feeling as if I had fallen into an ice cellar. When we had first gotten together, Sam had introduced me to several of the brothers he hung around with. From bits and pieces of what they said, I learned that the people in their circle played very loosely. Every rich young man had several girlfriends around him. No one thought there was anything wrong with that. After struggling with myself for a long time, I finally told Sam plainly that I was not with him for his money. If he was like that too, then he could choose to break up sooner rather than later. But the man pulled me into his arms instead, rested his chin on the top of my head, and let out a muffled laugh. Miranda, I'm not like them. I only love you. Chapter 6. But now, Sam lowered his eyes and said coldly, I've stayed faithful to you for a full 3 years, and I never even gave Julia the title of girlfriend. What more do you want? It felt as if all my strength had been drained away in an instant. Numbly, I tugged at the corner of my lips. Let's just leave it at that. Sam's pupils contracted. What do you mean? I answered softly. Let's break up. The man stared at me fixedly, then suddenly laughed and said lightly, Sure. After that day, the news that Sam and I had broken up spread through the entire company like wildfire. No matter where I went, I could always hear malicious gossip. TSK. Have you heard? Miranda and Sam broke up. Wasn't her position something she got by sleeping her way into it in the first place? Now that she's lost her backer, shouldn't she hurry up and quit? If you ask me, Miranda just doesn't know how to appreciate what she has. I heard she made a scene with Sam, and that's why he dumped her. I couldn't stand her long ago. She's obviously just an office favorite with connections. So what's with all the fake pride? People tripped me up openly and behind my back. Not long after, because I was mentally distracted, I made mistakes at work and was suspended again. My mother's treatment costs were yet another enormous expense. My savings gradually ran dry, left with no choice. I could only take all kinds of side jobs, working odd jobs during the day and delivering takeout at night, and in the late hours of the night when I had free time. I always lost control and went to look at the flirtatious posts Julia made with Sam. Then I would endure emotional backlash stronger than the last time. I spiraled inward, lost control, and broke down crying. I even started to suspect that asking to break up back then had been too impulsive and reckless. During that period, because I couldn't eat, I lost more than 10 pounds. Later, while delivering food, I fainted from low blood sugar. When I woke up again, I was in the hospital. Sam was sitting by my bedside, seeing me open my eyes. He explained lightly, I'm your emergency contact. So the call came to me, for no reason at all. My nose stung. My tears would not stop falling, and then I couldn't hold back anymore. I hugged Sam and broke down crying. The man gently patted my back. He let me vent all my emotions and smear tears and snot all over his expensive suit. At last, Sam sighed and said softly, Get back together with me. See? You can't live without me. I nodded blankly. After we got back together, I no longer dared throw tantrums, and everything seemed to return to how it had been before. I no longer had to worry about my mother's treatment costs, and I also returned to the company. On the surface, my coworkers no longer dared mock me. The only difference was that I began to resist any intimate contact with Sam. As long as he touched me, my body would uncontrollably retch. So, with a dark expression, the man openly kissed Julia, held her hand, and hugged her right in front of me, without the slightest attempt to hide it. I watched coldly as he hurt me again and again, and my emotions, from anger at the beginning, then numbness, had now become complete stillness. I knew that this time, I could finally let go. Early the next morning, I arrived at the company, and the first thing I did was go to HR to submit my resignation. Roxana looked at me in shock. Does Sam know about this? I smiled at her gently. Sam won't care, perhaps remembering all the gossip that had been circulating in the company during this period. Roxana said no more and efficiently handled my resignation procedures for me. Today was my last day at work. The handover of my duties had already been completed some time ago. Now, I could leave the company directly. I drove to the hospital. Mom's condition was even better than I had expected. I talked with her about many things. I brushed over everything that had happened during those years in just a few words, and planned a beautiful future life. It wasn't until afternoon that I methodically completed the discharge procedures and settled Mom into a 5-star hotel. Then, for the last time, I returned to that villa to pick up the luggage I had packed in advance. The plane ticket had already been booked. If nothing unexpected happened, tonight, I would leave the city. Chapter 7. It was almost laughable. Really, I had deliberately avoided them and made sure to return to the villa before he got off work. When I opened the door, I still ended up catching Sam and Julia tangled together on the sofa. The woman was acting coquettish. Sam, the condom. Only when they noticed the movement over here did the two of them see me and hurriedly start putting their clothes back on. I kept my eyes straight ahead. I walked past them, pulled out the unfinished box of ultra-thin 001 condoms from the cabinet, tossed it toward them, and spoke in a voice so calm it was almost unnatural. Have fun. After saying that, I went straight upstairs to get my luggage from the bedroom. When I came back to the living room again, Sam was already fully dressed. The moment he saw the suitcase beside me, the man's face darkened. You're moving out? I nodded. What I didn't say was that I wasn't just moving out, I was leaving the city altogether. Just as the atmosphere turned tense, Julia suddenly let out a laugh. Come on, sis. You're not putting on this whole act on purpose because you got jealous after seeing me getting intimate with Sam just now, are you? But the more you make a scene, the less he'll like you. Hearing that, Sam's expression eased a little, but it still didn't look good. He said coldly, Miranda, it's just one project I asked you to hand over. How much longer are you planning to make a scene over this? As for my relationship with Julia, ever since we got back together last time, haven't we already reached an understanding? If you walk out of this villa today, then don't ever come back. No, raised under modern values from childhood, I could never accept my partner having another woman constantly by his side. The reason I chose to endure it was that, at the time, I had no other choice. I needed the financial support Sam provided, and I needed to stay by his side even more, so that I could slowly desensitize myself and completely strip this love, which had seeped into my bones and blood, out of my body. I looked at the familiar face before me and spoke very softly, as if I were saying it to myself. Sam, let's break up. This time, I won't beg you to get back together with me again. Sam's face turned livid. Without realizing it, he raised his voice and asked in disbelief, What did you say? I did not answer him. I turned around and dragged my suitcase out of the villa. After picking up my mother from the hotel, I took a taxi to the airport. Every expensive gift Sam had given me during this period had been sold off by me, exchanged for an apartment in Sea City and more than $1 million in cash. By the time the plane landed, a heavy snow was falling. Fortunately, I had checked the weather here in advance, and had prepared plenty of winter supplies. After bringing my mother back to the apartment I had just bought, I began furnishing the new home, watching the house gradually fill with things. My heart was filled with a kind of happiness I had not felt in a very, very long time. Back then, one reason I chose Sea City was because it was a livable place, and the other was because a good friend of mine had settled here. She could hardly wait to ask me to meet. Busy lady, are you free this weekend? I'm taking you to the most famous hot pot place in Sea City. You have to come. I sighed helplessly. I just moved here, and there are still a lot of things I haven't taken care of. Let me get settled first, and I'll come find you as soon as I'm free, okay? It's a deal. Just after I hung up, a WeChat message popped up. Sam, you resigned? I frowned instinctively, just as I was thinking about how to reply. A few more messages came from him. Miranda, how long exactly are you planning to keep throwing a tantrum? Have you thought about what your mother's treatment costs are supposed to do now that you quit without authorization? Come back now, and I can pretend none of this ever happened. Chapter 8. I replied to him calmly, thanks for your concern, but my mom has already been discharged. As soon as the message was sent, I immediately blocked every way Sam could contact me. Of course I knew. Sam was not genuinely concerned about my mother's condition. This was just another way of controlling me and making me act according to his wishes, given that he really had spent a large sum of money. Replying to him was already the greatest courtesy I could offer. After being busy the entire day, I lay on the sofa to rest and idly scrolled through my Moments feed. A post Julia had made half an hour earlier suddenly came into view. It was an official relationship announcement. Dear Mr. Sam, life is long, but I will walk by your side all the way. The attached photo showed the two of them with their fingers tightly interlocked. I casually gave it a like. After blocking and deleting Julia's contact information, I turned off my phone. Silently, I placed my right hand over my heart, feeling its steady and powerful beat. There was no longer that suffocating feeling of not being able to breathe. The love I once thought would trap me for a lifetime, when I looked back on it now, was nothing more than that. In the days that followed, I found a stable job in Sea City with a pretty good salary. In my spare time, I went shopping and out to eat with my best friend. Mom was also in good health. She quickly became familiar with people her age downstairs in the neighborhood, and even started introducing me to the sons of some aunties and uncles. She said one of them was handsome and barely worthy of me. I didn't know whether to laugh or cry, but because I had no intention of starting a new relationship, I kept putting it off. As the end of the year approached, under my best friend's lead, we went together to try the hot pot restaurant she had mentioned before. The heating inside the restaurant was turned up high. The broth in the pot bubbled and simmered. I got so warm that I took off my down jacket. Beyond a spotless pane of glass, heavy snow was falling outside, and laughter filled the surroundings. I could not help curling my lips into a smile. Seeing my silly grin, my best friend couldn't help asking curiously, "What are you thinking about? You look so happy." A layer of mist clouded before my eyes. I sniffed and said in a small voice, "I just feel very happy." My best friend put a slice of fatty beef into my bowl, then pointed out the window with a teasing smile. "There's something even happier. Look outside. There's a handsome guy staring at you the whole time. He's covered in snow and hasn't even noticed." I followed the direction she pointed, and then, without warning, my eyes met Sam's. After that brief moment of eye contact, I turned back and said as if nothing had happened, "Ignore him." My best friend sensed that the atmosphere was off and said nothing more, quietly changing the subject. But when we came out of the hot pot restaurant, Sam was still standing there. The man's face was pale from the cold, his eyelashes covered with snow, and in a hoarse voice he called my name, "Miranda." My best friend made an excuse and slipped away. I frowned instinctively and said expressionlessly, "What is it?" Sam's Adam's apple bobbed. "Let's get back together. I promise Julia won't affect you anymore. If it really bothers you that much, I can cut off all contact with her completely. From now on, you'll be the only woman by my side." I refused him flatly. "No need." Sam's heart tightened. He unconsciously stepped forward 2 paces and pressed. "Why?" Chapter 9. I took a deep breath. Now that I was bringing up all that pain again, it already felt like nothing out of the ordinary, because being with you was just too exhausting. For the past 3 years, I was constantly enduring coworkers' hostility and ridicule, and you would never stand on my side. Actually, even without Julia, I would have broken up with you sooner or later, because you simply were never a qualified partner. You're arrogant, promiscuous, self-important, and untrustworthy. You stubbornly believed I was with you for ulterior motives, and you kept trying to turn me into the kind of person you wanted. Through countless late nights, I spiraled inward, broke down, and doubted myself, until not long ago, when I finally became sure that it wasn't my fault. The reason things turned out this way is that, very unfortunately, I happened to meet a bastard like you. With every sentence I said, Sam's face went a shade paler. At the end, The man's face was deathly pale, and his tall body looked unsteady in the snow. He parted his lips, seeming as though he wanted to say something, but not a single word came out. I looked at him calmly and continued, "Stop trying to win me back, because you're simply not worthy." After leaving him with those words, I did not spare Sam another glance. I hailed a cab and left directly. In the rearview mirror, the man stood frozen stiff where he was. His figure grew smaller and smaller, until he disappeared completely into the vast falling snow. A few days later, in the end, I couldn't resist my mother's insistence and went to have a meal with the young man she kept calling handsome and outstanding. His name was Hudson. He had graduated from the same school as I had. His family background and looks were both very good. During the meal, he was also extremely considerate and gave me plenty of emotional comfort. Hudson took out his phone and asked with a smile, "Can I add your contact?" I asked back, "As friends?" The man still smiled good-naturedly. Sure. We added each other's contact information, but just as I put my phone down, I saw Sam's livid face. He was standing abruptly beside the table, staring at me without moving. Hudson couldn't help asking, "And you are Miranda's boyfriend?" Sam answered coldly. At that, Hudson looked at me in surprise, but instinctively placed himself on my side. "Is he harassing you?" Warmth rose in my heart, and I explained openly, "He's my ex." Hudson instinctively moved to shield me behind him, staying on guard against Sam, and warned him, "Man, refusing to let go is not a good look." Sam stared at me fixedly for a long while. Only then did he clench his fists and grit out, "Your taste really isn't very good. If you regret it, remember you can come back to me anytime." Leaving those words behind, the man turned and walked away without looking back. After that encounter, I never saw Sam again, and things didn't work out between Hudson and me either. For one thing, he was eager to settle down, and for another, I truly had no desire to start a relationship. I asked him out for a meal one weekend and clearly told him what I had in mind. Hudson smiled. "I know, the first time I met you, I already knew there wouldn't be anything after this for us. But being able to know a friend like you already makes me very happy." I raised my glass to him. "I'm honored to know you too." After some more time passed, I heard from a former coworker that Sam and Julia had a huge fight and then broke up. The woman was also fired from the company, and Sam became just like the other rich young men in his circle. The girlfriends by his side changed one after another, but none of them stayed with him very long. In the end, he probably got tired of it all, and Sam stopped being interested in dating. He began devoting himself fully to work. One very ordinary afternoon, I received a 7-figure bank transfer. The note said, "If you run into difficulties, come find me anytime." I accepted the money without the slightest hesitation. As for going to find him, there was no need. I had already survived the hardest stretch of my life. What lay ahead after that was all open road.